Jupiter, Jupiter, Vitzere, Vitzere, Yeshiva.
Ba. Yeshiva. Yeshiva. Yeshiva.
Saturn, Jupiter, and the Earth. We're all together today. Yeah, we're all lined up, folks.
We're all in
We're all
alignment.
lined up. Yep, it's beautiful.
We're all in alignment, and here we've come to the 2:39 p.m. We're not running that late. We're just about starting now our third installation of this day that started at 9:30. Seemed like 5 minutes ago in a lot of ways. This day has gone very fast for me.
Very
I don't know
quickly,
about the
yeah.
rest of you.
Brum.
Lorelai, I'm
Yes.
gonna have to excuse myself. I'm still teaching tonight, believe it or not.
Thank you so much for coming. I
Yeah,
can't even begin to thank you. Did you get a chance to record on your computer also?
yes, I did.
Okay, Tove,
Yes, I did.
great. All right, wonderful. I will send you the recording of this session.
Yes,
Because
I would
I will
like
be
that.
talking about some of the things that you talked about
Okay,
and arguing a little bit, but not too
Okay.
much.
okay, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm starting class in an hour and a half, so and I haven't had lunch or dinner or anything.
I know. I just had a date, and by date I don't mean a boyfriend. Unfortunately, I had
I
one.
mean, a
of these.
date. Yeah.
Because if I had had a boyfriend, I would be very, very tired and drained and unhappy. So I had one of these instead to keep
Well,
the energy up. That's
No,
a
you would be
joke.
thrilled. You would have a man in your life that makes you happy.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Thank you. And for my friends who
Figured
been
it
to
out.
all 3 of my weddings here. No, I'm kidding. Mira, before you go, I just want to
Yeah.
quickly mention something about the cardinal signs.
Yeah.
It's something I'm going to be talking about. in
Yes,
terms of
yes.
the as above, so below thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, in Numbers 2, the tribes around the Mishkan, Yehuda is Aries. So it's Yehuda and Ephraim and Dan and Reuven. These are the 4 cardinal signs, cardinal directions. And I know that I just want to ask, do you have a sense of when the cardinal signs became cardinal signs? Because the cardinal signs are the 4 directions and the other ones are the fixed signs. The fixed signs were the ones.
You're talking, look, it's a debate when, because you're talking about the precession. You know about the precession of the equinox.
Yeah, we know about it, and it makes our lives
Yeah.
really miserable.
So we are now, depending on when you start counting, we are still in the age, even though you think age of Aquarius, technically, I think we're still in the age of the Pisces, the fishes, with about 300 years to go. But again, it depends when you start counting. What's the reference point? So that means that, to put in a very crude numbers, let's say the last 2,000 years, the age of the fishes.
Mhm.
I'm deliberately saying fishes, which is the constellation.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Prior to that, the age of the ram. So you're talking already 3,000 years. Okay.
Right.
Now back from the ram, it goes to the bull.
Right.
Okay, the bull. Since you brought it up, here's my favorite things I said about the age of the bull. The age of the bull means that, well, it means that the vernal point was in the bull.
Right.
The vernal point, what we call springtime.
Right.
It means that when the sun arrived in that sign, it meant this is springtime, summer is following. That's the vernal point. Now, if the bull is the vernal point, then then you take all the other 4 signs in the square, and you get the scorpion on the other side.
Right.
Then you get the lion, and you get the water bearer. Okay.
Right, but those are the fixed signs. I mean, in terms of the modality.
No. I'm just referring to the first. It needs to be established that it means that in that era, in that era, these were the constellation that marked the seasons.
I see.
And by the way, this may sound heretical. No. The
Oh,
golden,
heresy's our middle name here.
wait. The golden calf, Egel HaZahav, Egel. It was not a calf, it was a bull. The Egyptians worshipped the bull. In India, they still do. The reason is that it reflected that zodiacal sign, which is the marker of the springtime, the constellation itself. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the word cardinal applies because it's the cardinal points, not cardinal signs, the cardinal points. In our time, because we are in the tropical zodiac will call the Aries point, regardless which constellation it is, it's called Aries.
Right.
That's the tropical, this technical, this is astronomy, okay?
I get
So,
that.
so it will always be Aries, regardless which constellation is in the background.
Right. That's the whole
About-
precision problem.
Exactly, not a problem.
It's a situation. It's a matzav.
No, there's some incredible symbolism there. I can go on if you
No,
want.
I know. No, we're good. We got to start our thing, but I just wanted to ask you about that really quick. So if you have to go, I'll make sure that you get a.
No, I can talk a few minutes, but if you have to start, then I'll just go.
Well, I think we should start probably. Jonathan is there.
Okay.
I know it's like we're in so many different time zones right now. People, I want to just say, we have a lot of people here who are in the room. I want to see if one of my book authors is still here. She was here earlier. Helen R. Jacobus, are you here? I saw her. She wrote this wonderful book that's extremely expensive that I bought with my student loan money. I had to take out a loan to buy this book. Zodiac calendars in the Dead Sea Scrolls and their reception. Ancient astronomy and astrology and early Judaism. I invited her to the conference as a guest, and she was here for a while. So I just wanted to say a big up to her. Everybody who's coming and just showing up, if I have your book, I'm just going to wave it around. Yosef, I had your book, but I left it in Israel. Your first book. So
probably safer there.
Yeah.
What did Yosef write about? Yosef, what did you write about?
Drugs and Chassidus, cannabis and chastity.
I want to introduce our panel so that everybody knows who's going to be talking, even though we're a little punch drunk now at this time. So just hold on.
Okay, I'll get the recording.
Okay, whoops, what is this? All right, our panel now is Rabbi Jonathan Seidel. How many good things can I say about him? I don't even know.
Don't embarrass me. Just let's start. Forget it. They can read the
Okay.
bio.
Blah, 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 blah. Jonathan is great. He's a rabbi. He's the visiting rabbi of the Aquarian Minyan. He's the Rosh Yeshiva of the Aquarian Minyan Yeshiva, which even though he has like 1 million degrees, and that might be the most fun thing he's doing. And our friend Yosef Needleman Ruiz, who recently was married, Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov and Zimun Tov.
Get on screen, baby. Come on.
Is the author.
These things happen.
Okay. Yes, you have a baby there. Could be. So the famous book that he wrote is called Cannabis Hasidus, the Ancient and Emerging Torah of Drugs. And one of my favorite book covers has the Baal Shem Tov smoking his very special pipe. And is working on a book right now about pop cartoon Kabbalah. He's one of the smartest people I know, and he has been thinking about Saturn and Jupiter for a really long time. And so when it was apparent that this was going to happen virtually and not in Jerusalem, as was the original plan, there was a movement abroad, and we recruited him to come and be with us today. So thank you so much for waking up in the middle of the night and whatever else you're having to do to keep your house quiet. We appreciate that. So Mira covered so much. She really covered so much about, hold on a second. Yes, Mark, it is more Aquarian for it to be online. Obviously, the creator of the universe knew what she was doing way better than I did. So we make our plans, but God laughs. So what are we doing? We are talking now about the conjunction. We're talking about the Aquarian age. What does it mean? I want to ask Jonathan, do you want to start with your presentation?
Yeah, I'd love to, if you'd like me to.
I would like you to.
Kavod. It's so good to be here, everybody. Welcome to the Aquarian Minyan Yeshiva. When Lorelei, in a stroke of genius, created that word, I almost fell off my seat and I laughed like, oh my God. In one word, she changed history, reality, charts of many people, and my life. Thank you, Lorelei. I'm the Kepala Yeshiva. I don't want to be the Rosh of anything. That's too patriarchal for me. But I'm very delighted to be here. We are facilitating a lot of education online in the last 9 months, sparked by Lorelei and all of us that have come together to learn. So I want to talk about the conjunction in terms of magic and ritual today. And I want to introduce a word to the conjunction today, which I've written a chant for, which is ruchaniyut, which was in ruchaniyat, in Arabic and Hebrew, the word of drawing down from particularly auspicious moments, spirituality into your body. So somatic drawing down, as Victoria Hanna did with us just a few minutes ago, beautifully. So ruchaniyut, at particular conjunctions of planets, is auspicious and powerful for us. And how do we do that? We do that through silence, sounding, as Victoria showed us, and through chanting. Our ancestor chanted down and davened down energies from the stars at that moment, auspicious. And that goes back before ancient Israel. It goes to Babylon. It goes to indigenous shamanic cultures of drawing down star energy. So I wanted to speak of drawing down the Saturn energy. And that's a very, Lorelei knows more about this than I do, but I want to mention the dual image of Shabtai, the association of the Sabbath with Saturn, and why the Jews were associated with Saturn and its problematic nature. So I want to say first, the ancients believed that Saturn had melancholic and negative aspects. It was that melancholy and sadness that could be the source of rage, resentment, and magic, negative magic. So I want to say that a number of scholars, and Edel, whole book, here's devoted Moshe Edel, may he live long, wrote about these elements of the dual side of Saturn itself, which is Saturn is melancholy, is sadness, and perhaps malevolent. Perhaps the energies from Saturn could be drawn down for malevolent purposes, for negative magic, which, as we heard from Marla, is other people's religion. It could be magic. That's Jonathan Smith also theoretically. So kishuf would be negative, kshafim, and other negative words from the Bible around magical powers that are malevolent. So the Jews became associated with Saturn partly because the Greeks and the Romans saw them as sad and malevolent in some kind of matrix of energy. And Lorelei, we've talked about this in our dialogue. So the Jews resented that. The rabbis resented the Saturnian turn in many ways, and yet adopted it because Shabtai is associated with Shabbat. So we have at auspicious times the idea that Shabbat can overturn the Saturnian magic that was practiced. And we have texts that Alamono mentions from Ibn Ezra, medieval scholars who mention practices that turn into later the witches' Shabbat. And that's what Edel's book is about. That somehow the Jews became associated with magical powers that were performed on the Sabbath with goats, and later on women were associated with that negative magic. Notice the misogyny inherent in this accusation. The Jews were the female people, and they were associated with negative female magic on Shabbat, dafka. So the rabbis respond, and other Jews said, no, our magic, our rituals to keep Shabbat, to make it a day of joy and not melancholy, to light up the lights against the darkness of Saturn's melancholy. So Jews were associated with Saturn very strongly. In fact, Lorelei has this outrageous theory that I love. I just think it's so funny. to say that the Saturnalia festival was actually modeled on the Jews' energies. Hafuch, right? Instead of us adopting Saturnalia, the ancient festival celebration around the solstice, the Romans and the Greeks got it from us. I think that's brilliant and interesting and worth discussing. I don't know if I buy it, but it's certainly a fantastic idea, Lorelei. You always get me thinking. So how are we to manifest Shabbat energies? And then how does that relate instead of negative, malevolent energies associated? And what is Jupiter? Jupiter is Yah Pater in Latin. You all know the root of Jupiter is Yah, Yao Pater, Father God. Those Father God energies of justice. So justice combines with Saturn at the conjunction. Yao Pater. In fact, the word Yao, Jupiter, sounds a lot like what? Yao. It's like our deity sounds a lot like the name of God in Latin when it's pronounced with a Yao. Okay, so there are also syncretistic magical spells integrating the Latin name for God with Yah in antiquity that they used in magical spells to bring down energies to use for good purposes, healing purposes, or negative, malevolent purposes. So I wanted to speak about Shabbos energy as the kind of counter melancholic. Shabbos energy is messianic energies. Shabbos energy at the right time, I mean that part of the week, and also in our consciousness, through celebration, through davening, through joy, through love on Shabbos, counters the negativity of the Saturnian energies that the Greeks and the Romans and others associated with us. That was our response. We keep Shabbat. It's not a holiday of darkness or the melancholic aspects of Saturn. Now, interestingly enough, on the messianic trajectory, literally, figuratively, we get Shabbatai Tzvi, right? Shabbatai Tzvi, which we can talk about as a whole conference. So you can take the Kabbalistic understanding of Saturn and eventually get through Lurianic Kabbalah the idea of Leman Yerida Aliyah, right? To go down first before you go up. You have to indulge in the dark energies before you can go up into the brighter ones. And that's a spherotic process through the worlds. And so that's how the Sabbatian movement, the Shabtai movement, moved forward. And I found another wonderful thing in Alamano from Idel. Shabbat is the opposite of Shabtai. No Shabbos. Shabbat in Aramaic, right? Is that not cool? Shabbat is Shabtai, with the E is in no Shabbat. So we want to fight against that. We want Shabtai. We want the Sabbath energies in us. We want to be able to move towards Mashiach through Shabbat. And everybody's, when is Mashiach coming? When all the whole world observes Shabbos, or 2 Shabbases in a row. What's the Talmudic statement? It's messianic, right? 2 Shabbases in a row. Messiah will come when that happens, meaning we'll manifest that first. And I like to say Reb Zalman's idea is that we're going to all manifest Sabbatian consciousness, Shabbat consciousness, messianic consciousness before Messiah comes. We're all going to do that. And so I don't know the date of Mashiach coming. It's a great question. Daniel Jeremy Silver, Rabbi Silver, wrote an entire book where he looked at speculation around Kabbalistic numbers, around the coming of Mashiach, around conjunctions. He looked at like 10 different auspicious moments in history. If you read that book, it's called something like Messianic Speculation in Israel. And the rabbi said, it's pashnisht. Can't do it. Don't waste your time. Don't speculate about Mashiach. You're just wasting your time. And thousands of people did it anyway. They did a lot of math and calculations about when is Mashiach coming, what conjunction, what auspicious sign. So my point here is very simple, is that we turn the negative energies of Saturn into positive energies with Shabbat. And that when we keep Shabbat, we bring a lot of light into the world and we activate that process, the spiritual trajectory, the collective, what was the word she used about we can even avert plagues, right? The Makah Klali. Right now we're going through a collective, America is particularly has a bad sign right now with the plague. And you can look at my class I taught on this last spring on plagues and epidemics in Jewish history. But now we have the ability to break the plague through action at the level of Asiyah, maybe even the level of Yetzirah too. They're working both. So we have Shabbos energy. We're combining it today with Tzedek energy, with justice energy and earth energies. All 3 are in alignment. That's auspicious. That means that we have a good start now to move things towards healing for the planet, towards Mashiach. Thank you.
Yay. Yalla Mashiach. Good, great. Thanks, Jonathan. It can't come too soon for me, but you know, there's a lot of overlap. We were talking about the different ages before. The ages don't start and stop on a certain day. It's like waves, right? It's we're still have so much of the age of Pisces going on. The exact starting time of date of the age of Aquarius is not obvious because there's many different systems, but the conjunction that we're having today is very, very significant. I do want to talk about that. Joseph, I want to go to you though first. Middle of the night guy, waiting up for us. Welcome. Can you turn on your microphone? Are you on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't think of the air. Maybe air.
All right. You're a
There's
little.
a slight delay and delay to Galilei.
It's crazy. I'm not even seeing your mouth move, but I'm hearing your voice, but it's kind of crackling. Can you get a little closer to the mic? Or
Yes. Let's see. Does that sound better? Let's see if also
That's
getting
better.
closer to the.
That's better. Whatever you're doing is better than, yeah. So what do you have to say about Jupiter and Saturn? Because I've been thinking about this for a long
Closer to the
time.
Wi-Fi above.
Oops.
Well, yeah. I mean, Jonathan's pointing out how crucial the identifications become, and I think it's also very early. Plutarch claims it's the reason the first Jews to go to Rome were expelled was because we were understood to be Dionysus worshippers. And he quotes a tradition from Heraclitus, which is pretty early. Heraclitus is like pre-Socratic, saying that Saturn, Pluto, and Dionysus are all one, for whom they wage and wail. And he's describing the complex of the holy, which I think is the story of what global Frumkeit was before, well, before the next stage. I'm glad we've been talking about Aquarius in the context of Pisces, in the context of even the age of Taurus, because transition is so important. Ancient religion, let's say, also the Osiris cult, which winds up becoming a big recurring issue in Hellenistic Rome, is how much the god of the next world really becomes the main god of worship for a while, until they figure out a different relationship to, I think, social dynamics. And I think there is a lot of where the innovation of Zodiac Jupiter is in the first place, and part of why it's such a tension, the sort of the Romans seem like they're really into Jupiter. He really sort of endures between the Aeolian triad and the Capitolian triad. He's one of the few common denominators, even after Mars and Quirinus give way to Athena and Juno. He's there forever because everything in Rome depends on people getting along. And it occurs to me this is one of the major tensions, I think, between the Jewish relationship to other people's religion and the Hellenistic one, because they both suffer from the wrong kind of theist. The first Jewish community to come to Rome is expelled because of suspicion of being Dionysian, specifically under the name Jupiter-Sabezius, right? Which sounds like a few different things altogether. But I think they're using the word Jupiter at that point just to mean like, Father God. And they're making a differentiation between Father God on the level of the all-destructing hunger Father God, social taking responsibility and making things okay between all the kids Father God, which is what conventional Jupiter really is, where Tzedek and Zeus really are about. The Chiddush of Tzedek, as opposed to Shabbatai, I think what say is the difference between
Joseph, can you hear me?
solving the problem of the world. Yes.
Okay.
I hear
so-
you. It's hard to hear me?
Well, sometimes it's perfect and sometimes it's really not good at all. So if we could get a little bit more stability with the audio, I don't know if it's a bandwidth issue. Because now I can't hear you at all.
The internet out here is awful.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's his internet.
Let me see if I can find a better. Is that better?
Maybe you can try
Is that
turning
more
off the
stable at
video.
all?
Maybe if you, Joseph, if you turn off the video, you'll have more bandwidth and you just have audio. So
Okay, how is that working?
that's a lot better sound wise. Keep exactly in the position you are in.
Okay, good. Ha.
Okay.
No sudden movements.
Yeah.
Ironically, so much of what we're talking about is movements. Yes. Well, it's the relationship to movement. Like I associate Saturn with the unmoved creator in the aspect of Atikiyovim. In most ancient religion, what do Saturn, Pluto, and Dionysus have in common? Is they're the god of not this world. Well, even as much as Hellenistic religion gets into Sar Apis as all of the Osiris, as all of the Saturn aspects somehow beyond any of the specific stories, which I think is also part of the Shiva narrative. That's really where you see it in most modern ritual spirituality is Shiva. Shiva's huge because Shiva is the end of mythology and beyond this world while still being expression in relationship to this world, as opposed to Tzedek, as opposed to Jupiter, through whom this world is possible. Because the main difference, I think, in pre-theology, let's say in pre-mythology, between Saturn and Jupiter is the difference between a spirituality of overcoming this world and a spirituality of making space to empower all the forces in the world, which is so much the Jupiter trip. Like Tzedek is made the king of the gods in a lot of traditions because he tells each one that you're a king. And this is really the beginning of sharing. This is the beginning of making a space for diversity as the nature of the heavens and as nature of the cosmic, I almost said hierarchy, but I really mean something more like just the Ori, whereas Saturn just wants to eat and consume. And this is part of why Saturnalia is so consumptive as far as parties go. You know, we think of joviality as more of a party attitude.
Right.
We think of
Jupiter is
friendliness
the
as more of a party attitude.
Jupiter's the party planet. Saturn is the go on a diet planet.
Although no one's on a diet out of Saturnalia, everyone gets off their diet for that one.
That's right.
But I think it's the difference between, let's say, also Kislev is associated with consumption on a non-paced level, right? Le'ita, sort of swallowing, which is really more what Saturnalia is about. You know, the end of boundaries, the end of the personal. And in that way, the abusive thing is so natural and fundamental to it because it's oblivious. What's the original problem of Chesed before creation is it's very insensitive. You know, part of why I think in later Kabbalah Chesed is tempered through Hod, through Netzach, even after Gvura, is the need to at least even acknowledge the existence of the other, which is maturity. You know, that is maturity fundamentally, but it's also almost like a heresy on the absolute unity. Like if I know that God is everything and also just my desire, that's the Leviathan problem. That is the curse of the Leviathan in a lot of ways. You know, a hunger that is inherent to spirituality, but completely insensitive to reality, as opposed to tzedek, which is made of sensitivity. And that sensitivity also can swing towards the abusive just so naturally because Jupiter, you know, as much as Jove is made of sensitivity, is also made of exploiting the sensitivity for the sake of being able to do the other things, because the initial Saturn hunger is inherent in everything. Rishimin usatimin bego kal almin. in the same way that the Leviathan and the Yetzer Hara are sort of inherent in everything. And I think one of the magnificent things about all of history is how much it's building us to be able to relate to the Saturn inside of us. Because the cycle does seem very bound up in this ultimately immature state of just absolute hunger. And it's one of the strange things about aging, and I think watching my parents age and teachers age, is how much the negotiation between the part of us that is relating to each other and empowering each other, and the part of us that's just hungry and able to justify everything in the service of its hunger. I've been working on a project, Pop Cartoon Kabbalah, and one of the main themes in it is just noticing the aspects of characters who cross over from one medium to another. Because there's a lot of stories that are before books. And let's say there's a lot of stories that even after books, Chas v'Shalom Nebuch, are forgotten from the world, seem to cross over into newspapers, into movies, into whatever mediums people started using, because of how much what resonates with people is these fundamental resonant narratives and natures. And I've been appreciating that on the level of not the predictive, but on the testimonial. Where are people at? How are people doing? You know, Rav Nachman says, from the stories people tell, from the jokes they tell, you see a lot of the truth of where they're at. And the nature and problem of, let's say, dirty humor or horror, sort of shock humor, is how much they are revealing truths. And this is a little bit the Saturn intruding on the jovial, that sort of party moment where something darker comes through and slips in. I really appreciate, just going back, Miriam's work, discovering it through this conference was hugely enlightening. One of the things I really appreciated about it was building around those interchanges. Because for me, a lot of the project is just trying to have a sense of what any of these constellations mean. Because, my relationship to it was not from an inherent interest, but from just loving stories and the hope of giving over the fundamental true values through stories. And you don't have that in the quiet. You only have that in the sort of friendly. And we're all very excited for the moment where Saturn returns and friendliness is possible. And that's something that's strange and interesting to me about both ancient Egyptian religion, ancient Babylonian religion, ancient Greek religion, and Judaism. They have this tension around the messianic, where there's a longing for the return of Saturn, for the return of Eos, for the return of the dawn, but also very defined concern about what happens when she comes around the mountain. You know, what happens partially from the need for redemption and partially in the face of opportunity, where sensitivity can disappear. And I think this is one of the things I really appreciate about Judaism. And I don't know how lost it is or how present it was in Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek wisdom religion. You know, all we have is what we have. And what we have is so built on trying not to screw it up because of the hunger. I mean, I think that's one of the main things that all ancient religions and modern religions respected about Judaism, was a relationship to the hunger that kept things from being destroyed.
When you're talking about the hunger, you're talking about desire, right?
Yeah. Unelaborated, undifferentiated. Like, so desire on the level of Mars and Venus are defined. You know, we got priorities. Desire on the level of Saturn is somehow undivided. So much so that I think the gendering of Saturn is something that comes and goes. Like, in some systems, Saturn is incredibly masculine and patristic, hence like Jupiter Shabusius. And in some systems, let's say like even the nature of Atik Yomim, there's a Vedic myth about a guy who loved Shiva as the true face of God, and he was incredibly patristic and really resented how much Shiva is actually half female. Actually, completely in the inside is completely as much female as he is male. And this particular monk just refuses to bow to the feminine aspect of Shiva. And Shiva doesn't appreciate this, because you're not worshiping at least half of me. So he starts spinning around to constantly show his feminine aspect to this particular devotee, who starts just running around Shiva at impossible speeds just to only worship the masculine part. And they're just spinning around in circles into this sort of like speed top, turning all of the heavens into butter and ghee, until eventually Shiva just says, okay, you can worship the part of me you want to worship. I can tell you're serious. But I think this reflects how much undifferentiation there is in the original, and how much of our thirst for the spiritual, how much our thirst also for wealth, and how much our thirst also just for like oblivion really goes back to appreciating this undifferentiated. But that can only go on for so long before we step back into joviality, into friendliness, which is the real test of our spirituality, right? How much are we just funner to be around? How much is it nice and able to be sensitive to each other because we're doing well? And this is delicate. This is so delicate because need is so unclear, and indulgence is so desensitizing. I think that is part of the beginning of what we're talking about as far as concerns around the Aquarian. I, as a kid, romanticized the Aquarian so much as the opportunity for the cosmic and the new. And I know you from Jerusalem. We spent a lot of time in Jerusalem. We've all seen quite the depth of disaster of just disappearing into the unitive mysticism at the expense of sensitivity to the kids. It's one of the major themes in every Jewish spiritual tradition that I know is don't lose track of the kids. And I think the contrast between spiritual impulse and sort of Baal Tshuva culture, which the Spanish Inquisition sort of grows out of, a sort of militant, sudden imperative to just have a purity, as opposed to sensitivity to why and where people are doing things. I think it's one of all of the better movements in Jewish spirituality. I'm really thinking of Ishbitz as opposed to Kutsk, have to do with making space for acknowledging why the kids are in a way that they appreciate and can see us also. And I think that's why the ultimate messianic is always associated with making space for where the kids are at, rather than just our own juvenility. I think it's part of the secret of how the Leviathan, who's there for the first 3 hours of the day, gives way in God's experience to just playing with the kids, Tinoko Shobeit Rabbanan, or who God hangs out with once the Leviathan isn't, quite as interesting.
And the little children shall lead them.
Aha.
Right?
Aha.
Wow.
Right. Right. I feel like all latter-day Jewish messianism is basically about listening to the kids better, which is challenging. It's hard to trust those people sometimes.
Yeah, especially.
But it's not so different from trusting
I'm sorry,
grandparents. They're
It's
so
not-
similar. Trusting little kids is challenging the same way that trusting grandparents is challenging.
Well, as a grandmother now, I can tell you that the grandparent-grandchild relationship is way better than the parent-child relationship. Okay, they have a common enemy, the parent, right? I think that's one of the better relationships going on in this world.
I think we have to trust the child within us. I think very often people forget, as they are studying, as they are busy with so many different things in life, to drop back in, regardless of whether we're studying Kabbalah or something else, how important it is to stay sensitive to that too.
Amen.
That makes sense. I think this is part of why children's media is a lot of where we see concepts in divinity expressed in the most elemental ways. I spent a lot of the last couple of years towards this project looking at the characters that represent specifically Saturn and Jupiter on the good team and on the bad team, as far as monsters and as far as divinities. And in a lot of ways, monsters are safer because there's less of an impulse to romanticize monsters more than they're already there. Apparently, there's a lot of secular alchemical literature talking about Dracula as Saturn, and Van Helsing as Jupiter.
Really?
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Really
Van Helsing carries a hammer around.
Yeah.
Just squeezing them in. Squeezing them in.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah. Well,
lot
a
in
hunger.
That's an archetype I wouldn't have thought of.
And yet, it's one of the main ways you can diagnose characters is, are they defined by their hunger? I once did one of these for like the difference between like this, what stars are the Scooby-Doo cast and what stars are the Simpsons cast, because there's a lot of overlap, and it's actually very, very miforosh. Like by the Simpsons, Homer is the Saturnian figure, at least within the family dynamic. He serves and is himself nourished by and funded by the even more sort of like dark Saturn, Mr. Burns, who's a Pluto Satan, you know, in a classic way. But Homer himself, why is he so enthralled to the Mr. Burns extended thing? Is because he's just hungry too, man. His main social definition, along with his just general affectionateness, is just, ooh, you know, something like a which in the Scooby-Doo model is really more Shaggy. Scooby-Doo himself is like a secondary hunger to Shaggy's in the aspect of Mars. I think the dog in both Scooby-Doo and in The Simpsons is very much in the aspect of Mars as the sort of directed force. But Shaggy, similar to Homer, and this is hammered home in that Joss Whedon movie about horror characters, where the fool is the one in that particular chair. Now, similar in the tarot, right, where the first step is the fool paying no attention, because that is how listening to the child within, how, yes, that's the one, Cabin in the Woods, how much being present with the hunger is redemptive because it is so universal. A comedian, Eddie Izzard, has a whole routine about how of all of the American media things, like the French and the European appreciate very few of them except for Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo and Jerry Lewis, specifically because Scooby-Doo is not trying to impress anybody. He's a coward. They're cowards, and their fear and their hunger is so identifiable in a way that like a lot of the other cultural values on Scooby-Doo wind up being renegotiated in the later incarnations, where they really have to figure out what to do about the rest of those characters who are not so miforosh.
Wow. That's a wow. That's a gavalt.
This is a whole nother dimension of
That's a whole
Saturnalia.
other dimension of
Awesome.
the archetypes and symbolism of Saturn, Jupiter that I have never heard before, ever. This is completely original. So, wow, thank you for bringing that. Do you have anything
And
to say
yet
about
there the whole time.
what? Boy, did we lose you? Are you there?
Original, and yet there the whole time. Rishimin Vistimin Vigokal Amen.
What do you have to say
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Smithers?
I'm here. No, I'm here. I'm here.
What about Smithers?
You know who he reminds me of? Like Vulcanus or like Hephaestus, like this sort of assistant there. But you could also say he's sort of a Metatron, right?
It could be
Castrated.
Mercury is the sun's
Bart is
side.
Mercury. Smithers is too honest, though. Smithers has no trickster aspect. Smithers is not doing any business at all. He's a faithful servant.
Bart is Mercury, right?
Bart is Mercury. And on Scooby-Doo, whoever the bad guy of the week is Mercury. Mercury is the villain of Scooby-Doo.
What about
Whoever
Flanders?
is trying to scare you.
What about Flanders?
Flanders is a much more like one of those sort of servant agencies. I mean, you could say he's more like Aquarius itself, right? Only there as a sort of corollary, but also making a bridge for everyone else. Like Flanders is what humanizes Burns. The love of Flanders is the bridge that makes Burns somewhat and relatively and ultimately sympathetic. I think maybe connecting him to something like Azazel concept, because Smithers very much the opposite of a Saturn or a Mercury in that he's, or a divinity at all, in that he's not defined so much by his hunger as much as his devotion, just to this, you know, problematic, terrible force who he's just very impressed by. So maybe Smithers is us.
Maybe.
Although the name of Vulcan, of Hephaestus, Smithers already hints to how much the work is smithing, you know, hammering out and making something accessible. You remember my daughter Haley?
I
One
do.
year I was Jupiter for Purim, and I was, and I was making these sort of lightnings that with tying a little sort of explosive device to the end of these little like lightning things. So I'd throw them and they make a popping sound. And she's helping me put them together. And I'm saying, "You're the Hephaestus to my Jupiter." And she laughed and said, like, he must not be a very good god if he can't even make his own lightning. And I think that is part of the truth behind the power of the stars. Like the general Jewish cynicism about the power of the stars is not that they don't have power. No one thinks that Smithers' word is not gold. It's just that we want to acknowledge the real king, not the servants,
Right.
And Smithers is very much a servant in that sort of aspect.
So true. Baruch Hashem. So great. Thank you so much. Thanks for, can you tell us when your book is coming out?
I wish I could. I'd like to have it out before I turn 40. That would be awesome.
Okay.
I think I'm doing a reprint of that first book, and I have this kids book I did with Miriam Leibowitz a long time ago about nutrition that I might be trying to get out more urgently. I've been halfway through the last chapter for like 4 years. So I want to say as soon as I feel like I understand the 12, but the 12 starts with the 7. And thank you for being an inspiration this whole time, as far as even being able to gauge and take seriously what's going on in the stars above and in our bodies below.
Thank you.
I'm curious if you have favorite orders of the 12, as far as like the tribes and the organs, because that is where it gets a little jumbly. And a lot of my first getting into this was even just trying to have an opinion on the matter, because I really started this work trying to set up a little kids school. I was trying to make a little preschool based on the Sefer Yetzirah, because my friend at the time, Aaron Ganuth, had the idea that we really should be doing Jewish education in a sort of historical order of the Torah that was given over first, and then the later things later. So start with the Torah, with the Sefer Yetzirah for preschool, and then like Raziel Amalek, and then eventually get to the Bible once they're old enough, But to do that, I really realized how much I didn't understand any of the themes of the days of the week. Like Sunday and Monday are fairly self-explanatory, and sun and the moon are very elaborated within Jewish spirituality, even before getting too arcane and esoteric. That's right, Montessori does cosmic education. But Tuesday was such a mystery to me, because it seems so strange to think that Tuesday should be Mars. That seems somehow vulgar, because I don't associate Mars with Tiferet. And a lot of how I got...
There are competing systems. There are competing systems. There's not one system, even within the order of the tribes. There's the chronological order, and then there's the Kabbalistic order. There's the order in Numbers chapter 2 of the 12 tribes around the Mishkan, which splits up into Ephraim and Menashe. And then there's the Hoshen Mishpat, which is the breastplate of the high priest that has them in chronological order. So it's back to that idea of potentiality versus manifestation. So the potentiality is the order of birth, just the 12 stones in the birth order right there. And also these are the people on Sukkot. How do you keep your Ushpizin? What order do you do your Ushpizin in? Are you a Hasidish? You have to have Yosef on the night of Rabbi Nachman's yard site, or are you going straight chronological order? So even just within the most superficial aspects, you see that there's no one universal agreement. I hold by the Arizal, but that's because I'm me. And because
he's huge, that guy.
I know. Well, he's the RE. I'm going to show that actually a little bit in my presentation, in terms of my feelings of as above, so below, why the zodiac reflects the 12 tribes around the Mishkan, and what that has meaning for us as Jews and as humans. So I don't think that answered your question, except to say that.
No, you did. No, you absolutely did. That was the correct answer. I asked, by the way, I was in Sfat this last Shabbos for the first time in like 10 years, very randomly. And I saw David Friedman in the street, and I just instinctively asked him the same question, because I think of him as, and he gave the exact same answer, specifically, but specifically saying that the order of the tents around the Mishkan is his favorite order. And it is the one that they use in Hasidus. It is the one that Bnei Yissaschar uses. You know,
Right,
I
right.
saw it referred to in the secular world as like Samuel. What's his name? Not Rosner, but it's basically a machloka between that order and the one with the cardinal points that you and Miriam were talking about before, where you'd have Yehuda be Leo and Yosef be Taurus.
Totally
Which
wrong.
makes it
So wrong.
right,
Okay.
right.
So
Despite
wrong.
making sense.
So since you mentioned Spot, and I have to do a commercial for David Friedman, who
Yeah.
our friend, our dear friend David Friedman, who is an amazing Kabbalistic artist that you all know, just put out the Kabbalah coloring book. So many commercials in this broadcast, you guys, but it's all for good stuff. I haven't even started mine yet because it's so beautiful. I can't decide which one to do. So I'm waiting to have a few days off so I can like wind down and like connect to it. This is available at Afikomen Judaica in Berkeley, California, or you can go to the website of Kabbalah Coloring Book. It's on Facebook. Look for it, buy it, have it shipped to you. It doesn't matter how much it costs, it's worth it. Okay. That's a good selling point, right? It doesn't matter how much it costs, it's totally worth it. So
that's neat for you.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. So thank you. I want to go to my presentation because it's already 3:30. I don't know how we're doing this all day long today. Yes, and
I am
go
curious
ahead.
before you start.
Yes.
Before you start, I am so curious. I think part of what you wanted to bring up and part of the challenge of being shared is around the danger and the crossover, where it stops being conceptual and starts being something we've seen go too far already. Because I think we wouldn't be concerned about the abusive nature of the Saturnian. Dracula wouldn't be scary, except that we've seen how much the human idealism problem can go awry. Speaking of Tzfat, speaking of Jerusalem, and I'm super curious about what thoughts you had and observations you noticed as far as relating to this, because no one wants to be a wet blanket. No one wants to ruin the Saturnalia. It's one of the sort of tensions in Judaism is appreciating the joy of the truth in the thing without somehow ignoring. And I'm curious, what were things that you brought us together to bring up as far as the dark end? And I'm hoping this is part of where
we're going to go there. We're going there. I got to get there first, but we're on our way to talk about Aquarius, the dark side of the age of Aquarius and the upside, but we have to set the table a little bit just to give people a little bit of background about that. Okay. All right. So I am going to share my screen here. Hopefully. And there you are, but that's not what I'm looking for. I am looking for this. Okay, so just to set the table here, what we're talking about when we're talking about Jewish astrology. Remember Jewish astrology, the thing that we started off at the beginning? It's interesting because Miera said she doesn't really believe that there's such a thing as quote unquote Jewish astrology, just that the Jews took astrology and preserved it. And I think what the Jews did with astrology is they took it into the Beit Midrash and they made it a subject to study. And they made it, they learned about it. They incorporated it. It's what we do with almost everything. If we didn't invent it ourselves, we make it our own by what we do with it, okay? So the basic fundamental problem I had when I was living in Israel as an astrologer and a Bala Tshuva and somebody who had come from one life and entered another is I was constantly being told by people who, when I would tell them I was an astrologer, I would get this guy over here, Ein Mazal Yisrael. They would come knock on my door and want to drag me into the streets. No, that's not true at all. They would come to my door and say, I want you to do my zodiac chart, but don't tell anybody, because the Orthodox are very concerned with what are the Schwartzes next door going to think, A, and B, about possibly violating the rules. And the rules in the rule book, so to speak, says very clearly in the Shulchan Aruch, one must not consult astrologers or those who cast lots, as in Purim. So if it says that, then why, on the other hand, everywhere are all of these astrological motifs in art and artifacts, everything all over our entire history? So we went through this a little bit before, but there's no end of it, from the Dead Sea Scrolls to the zodiac themed synagogue floors and walls and ceilings, Torah crowns, Torah dresses, calendars. The zodiac is represented in Jewish art from antiquity until the early modern age. So there's no doubt about it that it was a very, very normative part of Jewish life, Jewish understanding, right up until the edge of World War II, when the whole, this is from Chaim Soloveitchik, his theory on this has to do with communal memory being lost in the Holocaust, that after the Holocaust, all we have left is text. And in text, it says this, but what did we really do? So there's this lived gap, this gap between what people actually do in their lives and what is written, what it says is written. And that might be related to the gap that you were talking about before, Yosef, between what we think we know and what is really going on. So my version of Jewish astrology, my understanding of Jewish astrology is that, not, of course, that we invented astrology, because obviously Abraham, if he's the first Ivri, the one who crossed over, the father of the monotheistic religions, lived in a place that astrology was already a big happening thing. So astrology was going on way before there were any Jews, but what we did was we took it and we related it to our own world and our own self. So how did this happen? We have the 12 signs of the zodiac, and everybody in their own personal natal chart has all 12 signs of the zodiac in their chart. Whether or not they have any planets in those signs or not is a whole other question, but each house, each of the 12 sections of the zodiac is divided up into what's called houses, and each of the zodiac signs rules one of the houses, and it happens to be completely overlaid with the 12 tribes around the Mishkan, as described in Bamidbar chapter 2, Numbers chapter 2, where it describes the order of the tribes as they encamped in the desert during the 40 years of the children of Israel wandering after they left Egypt and before they came into the promised land. So in the book of Numbers, it describes that they encamped this way 42 times. 42, as we all know, is the number. What is the secret of life? Somehow it has to do with the number 42. The encampment never varied. It was always exactly the same. It was always Yehuda to the east, and Ephraim to the west, and Dan to the north, and Reuben to the south, and the other tribes arrayed around them. These are the 4 cardinal points. Miera and I were just having a conversation right before this about the cardinal points, but the cardinal directions are north, south, east, and west. And in the Torah, whenever the Torah was written, the cardinal directions of north, south, east, and west were related to specifically to Yehuda and Ephraim and Reuben and Dan. So it specifically says by east, west, north, and south. So the cardinal signs, there's 3 kinds of signs, cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Cardinal initiates, fixed, establishes, and mutable changes or transformed things. And each of the 12 zodiac signs going around the earth in the completely, made up idea that there's 30 degrees between them, which isn't anything resembling truth. The ecliptic that goes around are all divided into the same portion, so to speak, as the array of the stars and the 12 tribes. So that's really the basis of my understanding of the relationship between the 12, sorry, I'm going to just mute people. People, if you're not muted, please mute yourself, because I'm hearing distracting sounds and it's distracting me. Okay, hold on. She also touched on historical astrology, which was invented in Persia in the 3rd century. And this was the idea that you could tell what was going to happen in history by the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. I have a great little piece from, I hope I can find it here, Bar Hiyya's conjunction. We were talking about Bar Hiyya, excuse me, Abraham Bar Hiyya. This is from a scholar named Josefina Rodriguez Arribas. She has a very long paper. It's an excellent paper. It's the terminology of historical astrology according to Abraham Bar Hiyya and Abraham ibn Ezra, in which she dissects how we got Hebrew terms for Arabic words, how it was translated. But in the process of doing this, she put together all of the conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn according to Bar Hiyya's Megillah HaMegillah, I think the 5th chapter in it. So she's showing more in chart form, which is maybe is going to be easier to see, the year, the conjunction, and the historical events. So the idea is that the Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions correspond to, trigger, or reflect important historical events. As she was talking about before, these conjunctions signal the birth of a great leader or the rise of a dynasty. So the conjunction in Pisces was, she was talking about the water signs. This is Cancer, Scorpio, and Cancer. This all happened with the birth of Moses, Israel leaving Egypt. So this is a long chart. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but anyway, it shows how all of these things happen during these different triplicities. And I want to show you guys in another way of looking at it. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. No. Yes. Okay. This is a table of all of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions from the year 581 BCE, which is a very long time ago. And I'm going to just scroll through this, so don't get dizzy, all the way to the year 2398. So how do we read this? We're just only looking at this last column here where it says Saturn, see? Because these are the conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn, the dates and the times that they happened. And you can see that they happen in elemental triplicities: Virgo, Taurus, 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 Capricorn, Virgo, 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 Taurus, Capricorn. Oh, then Libra comes in, back to Taurus, Capricorn, then Libra. Now we're moving into the air signs. So these are 12 conjunctions that have overlapping. There's a little bit of overlap at the beginning and the end of these cycles of elemental triplicities. So starting in the year 581 BCE, you've got the conjunctions in the earth signs. Then we move into the conjunctions in the air signs, including the conjunction in Aquarius in the year 303 BCE. This is the Alexander the Great. This is the era that Alexander the Great lived in, the rise of the Greeks. This was associated with the air signs during that time period. So we had all of the air signs and their conjunctions. Then we're back to water signs. Then we're in the fire signs. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want to show you where we are right now, okay? Because we were talking about, here we are, okay. So since the founding of America, since America came along, we've all been in earth signs. It's been earth signs for every single one of these conjunctions since, let's see, 1776, right? Was that the year we were born, 1776? So that was, Sagittarius was the last one, 1782. So actually the Revolutionary War and everything leading up to it was happening during fire sign conjunctions. Then we had nothing but earth signs since, I guess the first earth sign was 1802. So all during the 1800s, the 1900s, up until Ronald Reagan, where suddenly we had Libra. Libra was the first air sign in the changing over of the elements from earth to the next element, which is air. So we had in 1980 and 81, you can see that there were 3 conjunctions here in Libra. The Jupiter and Saturn made a conjunction in Libra in 80 and 81. Everything really started to change. Like, think about history, think about our recent history, okay? So that really triggered it. Then we went back and had that last conjunction in Taurus. And now here it's December 21st, 2020. Can you all see that? December 21st, 2020 at 0 degrees Aquarius. The next Aquarius conjunction is going to be 2080. Okay, and then the last Aquarius conjunction in this group is going to be in the year 2140. No, that's not the last one. This one is at 28, and then 2199. So this is what I'm calling now the age of the air triplicities, and specifically having to do with Aquarius and the age of Aquarius. As we talked about before, there really is no starting date for the age of Aquarius. There's a real, not a lot of agreement about when it starts, when it stops, but it's been said that it's started as long ago as like the 1700s, or it hasn't started yet. But all we know is we're still coming out of the age of Pisces, coming into the age of Aquarius. And what does the age of Aquarius even mean to us? Okay, I want to bring up something that has to do with us right now. Hold on. I have way too many documents going on here, okay? So this is a quote from Reb Zalman. Hello, Reb Zalman, over this. This is Shaul Magid wrote an article in 2015 talking about Jewish renewal, talking about the Jewish renewal movement as being sort of a harbinger of the age of Aquarius. He says, we've sought to usher in a new Aquarian age of Judaism. And then Reb Zalman responded to Shaul's article. He mentions the age of Aquarius. At the time when this phase entered the general conversation, I was strongly taken by the shift from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. It was for this reason that we called the flagship congregation in which we did much of our experimentation with liturgy and consciousness, the Aquarian Minyan. Of course, that's our little congregation out here in Berkeley, California. That's now gone full on Aquarian because of COVID. So what happened? We were minding our own business. Then a worldwide pandemic happened. We jumped onto the internet 5 minutes later, and boom, we totally went full scale Aquarian attack. Because of course, Aquarius also rules technology and electricity. The modern ruler of Aquarius is the planet Uranus, and the classical ruler is Saturn. So Uranus and Saturn have very, very different energies. But what do we mean by the age of Aquarius, right? There's 2 views of the age of Aquarius. There's the harmony and understanding. There's the age of Aquarius song from Hair, golden living dreams and visions, mystic crystal revelations, and the mind's true liberation. That is the Aquarius that we like. It's idealistic, it's utopian based, it's based on knowledge, science, and reason and fact, in contrast to the age of Pisces, which is still here, it's receding, which is the age of the Abrahamic monotheistic religions, Judaism and Christianity and Islam. So I want to look a little bit at the shadow side of the age of Aquarius. The idea of universal brotherhood, so to speak, sorry to use such a gendered word, humanness, humanitarianism, has a dark side to it, and that is a sense of intolerance. There's a definite intolerance of faith or belief, religion. Science says this is fact. There's no room for subtleties or nuances or choice. It's very rigid. Aquarius is a fixed sign. Fixed signs are not famous for being flexible. There's a thought that there might be even social or military coercion of the individual in service to collective ideals behind this. I can think of lots of examples of that might be happening even right now in very, very awkward and crude ways. There's an astrologer named Robert Zoller. He is actually the only astrologer who predicted the 9/11 attacks. And he is not a big fan of the age of Aquarius. He suggests that in the Pisces world, where religion is the opiate of the masses, it's going to be replaced by the Aquarian age in a world ruled by secretive, power-hungry elites seeking absolute power over others. Families will dissolve completely, or family ties will be hidden. He also believes that knowledge in the Aquarian age will only be valued for its ability to win wars. Scientists may even be able to precipitate earthquakes for military means. And the danger in the Aquarian age is that knowledge and science will be abused, not industry and trade. So he sees it as a dark age where religion is going to be seen as an offense. Neil Spencer, another thinker, says about the Aquarian age that the rise of scientific rationalism combined with the fall of religious influence is possibly an indication of the age of Aquarius. The growth in demands of human rights since the 1780s, the remaining unfulfilled, is another indication of Aquarius. He points out to the insane growth of technology, especially computers, the internet, space flight. This is all examples of the Aquarian age. And he thinks that possible negative examples of Aquarius include dumbed down media, that's pretty obvious, and consumerism and rapacious international corporations. This is a graphic of the Aquarius, which is a cooperative international mission between Argentina and America with NASA, and also our friends in Italy and France and Canada. It's very Aquarian. It goes into space with a lot of different countries cooperating together. So yeah, the idea of Aquarius as an archetype, Aquarius is a secular archetype. You know, we're not talking so much about the Jewish archetype, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but the idea of Aquarius is so futuristic, and has to do with brotherhood and humanity and all these great things and important things we need. Don't get me wrong, we totally need all of these things, but there is a possible dark side. Why? Because people are not as evolved as they should be. We're a lot of humanity is operating in a really low vibrational frequency, I guess you could say. So I feel that the potentiality for abuse of ideals is probably pretty high, but on the other hand, progress has to be made. So it's sort of like trying to decide between one thing or another. How do you walk that line? Any thoughts on that?
I have a thought on that. Is in the absence of religious guidance, secular ethics needs to be taught. And that definitely needs to be taught again and repeatedly.
And what does that look like? What do you mean by secular ethics? Do you mean like character traits, like
Yeah, like patience,
generosity?
kindness, and you know, generosity, charity, and friendship. What does caring actually look like? I mean, and it needs to be taught at the elementary level.
So that's interesting because I wonder if anybody here ever read a book called by Ira Levin, who wrote Rosemary's Baby, but he wrote an even better book called This Perfect Day. I don't know if anybody here has ever read it, but it's about a futuristic society where everybody's the same. They've bred like the perfect human. It's sort of like a multiracial kind of human being it's totally like the Aquarian vision in the sense that everybody is equal. Nobody gets more than anybody else. Everybody's provided for, but the society itself is functioning under, everybody just doesn't realize that there's this whole group of elites that are controlling the whole thing. And they're enjoying their differences. They're enjoying all of the things that, a lot of the physical things that the rest of the humans don't have, because for the good of everybody, nobody drinks alcohol because everybody knows that alcohol is going to be harmful for a society. So in this very Aquarian universal vision of a society, they got rid of alcohol, except for the elites are hiding out and getting drunk and enjoying, the finest wines and everything like that. So there's like this hypocrisy thing going on, that is problematic. What worries me the most about these kind of symbolic language and the way that we're thinking about stuff is the temptation to force what we believe is right onto other people, because we think we know better, because we're enlightened, because we're Americans, because we're Western, because we're this and that. So we're going to go out and make the whole world be like us because we think we know better. Yes, Jonathan.
Just wondering, picking up from some things you said a few months ago, how is artificial intelligence dark and negatively Saturnalian? I know a lot of people in AI. My nephew's getting a doctorate. A lot of us in this room are interested in AI. So I'm curious how that's dark. In what way is it dark?
I'd like to say something. There's a really interesting book called, oh geez, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's basically about how our data is being collected by artificial intelligence and that we have become the products.
Mm-hmm.
So Google, Facebook, they make their money by selling us information. It's not by what they're selling. And so, and I think that's the dark side of the information technology, which is very I should point out I'm an astrologer. So that's the dark side of all of this technology, which is very Aquarian, which is going to get worse over the coming years.
Yeah.
I don't think Aquarius is so much one belief system as competing belief systems that can't get along with each other. It's like my beliefs are better than your beliefs, but it's not like one big belief. It's not like everybody agrees on a belief.
Right.
The Aquarian energy, it's sort of like, I love humanity, but I don't like people.
Well, the misanthrope is one of the negative stereotypes of Aquarius.
Aquarius is about the idea. The idea for air is cold. The picture of Aquarius is the water bearer, but
right.
Aquarius is a cold sign. It's about the belief or the idea, not the people.
Right. I see that. That's definitely one of the manifestations of Aquarius. But Aquarius can also be, you know, that's the thing with symbolic language, and it doesn't, you can't just say like Aquarian people are cold, because as you know, because you're an astrologer, it's not just a person's sun sign, it's their moon, it's their rising, it's all the planets. It's a big mushy thing altogether. But they're logical. So that can be, they're not one of the characteristics of air signs is they're mental. It's air is thought, right?
Air
And
signs meet mind to mind, not heart to heart.
air signs are thinking signs. Like the element of air is thought, fire is inspiration, earth is manifestation, water is emotion. So when all of these elements are doing what they're supposed to do, and it can be harmonious, but the problem is it seldom is. I'm seeing a lot of stuff in the chat, so it's hard to keep up. Forrest says leads towards transhumanism too, which is about creating dependency on AI that can easily become slavery. Right. That could also be one of the dark sides. We can make ourselves robot slaves.
Right.
And we won't know how to make coffee for ourselves anymore in the morning. No, that will never happen in my house. No matter how many robot slaves I get working for me, I will never forget how to make coffee. But other people might run into problems there. There's something from Ibn Ezra that I wanted to bring. I want to show it. Hold on a second. About the conjunction in Aquarius. Here it is. Okay, in the Sefer Olam, Ibn Ezra states that any conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter that takes place when Aquarius is in an evil configuration results in harm to Israel. That's kind of scary, right? What does that mean? When Aquarius is in an evil configuration, results to harm in Israel. What does that mean? Does anybody have an idea what that means? Because it's a very, very broad statement.
Right.
Now, yeah, so he gives an example. He says those versed in astrology admit that a conjunction took place in a configuration which meant that they would remain in exile in Egypt for many more years. But because they cried out to God and returned to him, he saved them. So this is an example of God turning his own decrees, so to speak, to save the children of Israel because of their prayer. And this is something that Ibn Ezra does frequently. Like he'll go all out in some astrological thing and then he'll bring it back to, but if you do this and that, then God will help you. Because he was deeply religious and he lived with the ambivalence of seeing that there was so much veracity in astrology and yet being deeply, deeply spiritual himself. So he had to find a way to make it work in his mind. In his commentary on the incident of the golden calf, he writes, the astrologers say that the great conjunction of the two upper bodies was in the constellation of Taurus. He's talking about the non-Jewish astrologers. He says, this is a lie. The conjunction took place in Aquarius. According to the science of astrology, this is Israel's constellation. Many have tested this secret generation after generation. I too have seen this to be the case. Look, they place it at the midpoint of the sky. So scholars don't agree as to what Ibn Ezra referred to as the great conjunction of the two upper bodies, whether that meant the sun and the moon or Saturn and Jupiter. Okay, the astrologers believe that the calf was supposed to draw its supernatural powers from the constellation of Taurus. This is what Jonathan was talking about before, about Ruchniot. Am I saying it right? Ruchniot?
Ruchaniyut, yeah. Well,
Ruchaniyut is the idea of drawing down. That was the whole thing. The astral magical view of the golden calf is that they made this golden calf or golden bull in order to draw down the spiritual energy of the constellation of the stars.
Right.
So the non-Jewish astrologers believe that it was supposed to draw down the energy of Taurus, but Ibn Ezra says, no, it was Aquarius. He cites his own work and what seems to have been the common esoteric knowledge of his day regarding Aquarius being the ruling constellation of the nation of Israel. In either case, he says that the Israelites made the golden calf to draw down the emanations and the influence from Aquarius, the Dali, the bucket, the water bearer, whose position in the midheaven gave unobstructed and maximum exposure to the image of the golden calf, built to receive the spiritual energy emanating from the constellation of Aquarius. So this is where Ibn Ezra is actually saying that the ancient Israelites had this astral magical knowledge during the Exodus itself, right? So of course we know that Saturn is the classical ruler of Aquarius. Uranus wasn't discovered until the 1700s. So Ibn Ezra had no idea. He was only dealing with the archetypes of Saturn at that time. So this is the Dali that's known by its bucket shape, from which water is poured out from the heavens upon the earth. The constellation Aquarius would have fulfilled the symbolic function of Moses, presumably lost on Mount Sinai at that time, because that's where he was when they were making the golden calf, in ensuring that the Israelites had water in the desert. So weirdly enough, it also is possible to read Ibn Ezra's exclamation of, look, they placed it at the midpoint of the sky, as referring to Saturn's transit through Aquarius, which happens every 28.5 to 29 years, right? So the orbit of Saturn, some people here have had their first Saturn, well, everyone here probably has had their first Saturn return. Anyone here under 28.5 or 29? I don't know, but many of us have had our second Saturn return. Some have had the third Saturn return. This happens with regularity. So Saturn was in Aquarius during the time that the Exodus from Egypt was happening. So the transits of Saturn and Aquarius during these years corresponded with the Exodus from Egypt. So he is just saying that, I think that he's saying that Saturn was in the sky at the time, and that they made the golden calf to draw down the energy of Saturn because of Aquarius. Saturn in Aquarius is what I'm saying. Saturn, the ruler of Aquarius, in the constellation of Aquarius. So that was one of Ibn Ezra's more radical statements about astrology that I'm sure he got a world of grief from the Rambam and other people from, but yeah.
Yosher Koach. Wow. Wow.
There's just so much. I don't, there's so much to talk about. I don't want to take forever because it's already 4:06 and we've been on for quite a long time. And I actually, so hold on a second. I'm looking for, I'm in the wrong PowerPoint here. Trying to find the right one.
Why don't we chant for love and compassion?
Yeah, why don't you chant for love and compassion for me for a second?
Rachamim, chesed, v'shalom, ahava, v'rachamim, chesed, shalom, ahava, v'rachamim, chesed, shalom.
Okay. Yeah, I wish that I don't know what I wish, but I wish that I had a gigantic iced coffee. Somebody bring me one, okay? Hold on.
I have Saturn flavored iced coffee.
I need Saturn. Well, my Jupiter needs some coffee right now,
Jupiter,
big time.
There's
Big time.
Bring my teleporter.
Coffee. Okay. I just want to show you some pictures of how we look at Aquarius in Jewish art, because I think it tells us a lot about our concepts of Aquarius. This is from the Sefer Evernote. This is a picture of a woman at the well drawing water. And of course, remember about how many of our matriarchs were found at the well, right? The Rivka, think about Rivka. There she was drawing water for the servant of Abraham when he was going, Eliezer, to go find a wife for Yitzhak. She was drawing water from the well. Then, of course, Rachel also. And Moses' wife, Zipporah, also at the well. There's this image of a woman at the well, even though Aquarius is most often depicted as a man, like a man drawing water or a man's hand. But there is this other sort of hidden subtext of a woman. And there's something about women in the age of Aquarius that really we haven't touched on at all. I wish I could find the page that I wrote it on, and it's in one of these pages. Don't mind me as I just flip through trying to find this one thing. Oh, here, in an article about feminism in the French newspaper Le Fronde from 1890, this guy, whose name I cannot possibly pronounce, said, about March 21st this year, the cycle of Aquarius will start. Of course, that's in context of trying to predict when the Aquarian age starts. Maybe he was right, maybe he was wrong, nobody knows. And he says Aquarius is the house of the woman. He adds that in this age, the woman will be equal to the man. That's one of the radical ideas about the Aquarian age. Looking at it from the perspective of the patriarchy, of course, they would think it was radical. If you were thinking about what would happen in the future and a whole other kind of existence, the idea that a woman would be equal to a man had to seem extremely futuristic. So here we have a woman drawing water from the well. This is the water bucket, the water bearer. This is the Dali, the water bucket here from the Amsterdam Machzor, Germany, 1240. And this is the month of Shvat, the month of Aquarius, which is coming up after this month, from a Megillat Esther in 18th century Italy. So you see this motif of the water, right? This guy is carrying 2 buckets of water. The Bnei Yissakhar tells us that Aquarius is the sign of, first of all, everybody knows that the Jewish people don't have one zodiac sign. We have all the zodiac signs. So we are all of them, each and every one of them express some component and some aspect of the Jewish people, but it's also said we have no zodiac sign, but if we did, it would be Aquarius. Why? Because Aquarius, because the water is the bucket is the servant of the water, as Israel is the servant of the Torah. So we're supposed to pour out what we know, the Torah, our teachings. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So here's the classical Greek idea, right? The guy with the water and he's pouring it out. And this is, I think this looks more, this is like kind of Jupiterian more than Saturn-like to me, but this is the Mazal Dali from a Machzor from Vilna in 1844. The archetypes is the wise fool, the lunatic, the lonely, eccentric. Aquarians are humanists, reformers, innovators, individualists. They're unique, rebels, utopian, abstract thinkers, and I like to call them the mad scientists of the zodiac. The tribe of Asher, the Hebrew letter Tzadi, and the tikkun is eating, and that has a lot to do with the Seder of Tu B'Shvat, which really is a new thing. It isn't like something that they did a million years ago, but anyway, we've incorporated it into Kabbalah pretty much. Yeah, so the B'nai Yissachar says that according to astrology, Aquarius is the sign of the Jewish people, because although Israel is above the constellations and through prayers and good works can obtain their true desire regardless of the determination of the constellations, their natural manifestation is associated with this sign. And so the tribe of Asher is the tribe that's associated with Aquarius, and that Asher was born to Zilpah's second son. She was Zilpah's second son. Leah gave him the name Asher, which is like Ashrei, right? Praise. She said, "Unto me all manner of praise is due." Like, you should be proud of me, people, because I brought my handmaid into the house of my husband as a wife. She gave Zilpah to Jacob to have children with, right? Sarah did that also, just like I did, but only because she had no children. And so it was also with Rachel. But for me, I already had children. Nevertheless, I subdued my passion, and without jealousy, I gave my handmaid to my husband for wife. All will praise and extol me. So I think that's kind of a really interesting take on Asher. And it really reminds me a lot of Aquarius too, because the idea of subdued passions and without jealousy. One of the characteristics of Aquarius is the ability to detach, emotionally, to be able to see things in a rational way. Of course, you can go overboard with that too, but the blessing of Jacob, his father, Yaakov, to Asher. As for Asher, fat is his produce, fat is oil. It's a symbol for Torah, just like water is also a symbol for Torah. Just like oil separates from other liquids and maintains its purity, so too is with the wisdom of the Torah. Both water and oil are used for symbols of Torah wisdom. And this is a picture of from the synagogue in a place I can't even pronounce, Novoselya. This is somewhere in the Ukraine, I think. So this is from the tribes of Israel sometime in the early 20th century. So Asher was, you see, like his bounty, right? This is the fruitful area. It says that he'll provide blessings, delicacies of the king. So the bounty that flows from the territory of Asher, you see the olive on this, in this flag, you see the olive tree on this flag. This is also Sfat. Sfat is in the territory of Asher. So the water and the oil of the Torah via Kabbalah comes from Sfat and drips down into the rest of the land of Israel and flows out into the world. Where's Moses's? Oh, the blessing of Moshe to Asher. He says, "Blessed be Asher with sons, let him be favored of his brethren, and let him dip his foot in oil." So again, he mentions the oil. Why does Rashi says that? Because the women who came from Asher were beautiful and sought after for marriage, and they married all the high priests. This is Rashi. Rashi always comes up with something good, right? So I just really want to talk quickly about the planetary rulers of Aquarius and their different sort of archetypes, right? Saturn and Uranus. Uranus is the modern planetary ruler. Saturn is the classical planetary ruler. The qualities of Aquarius are really expressed through both of these planets. So Saturn is strict and Uranus is erratic. Saturn is structured, Uranus is unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. Saturn is traditional and Uranus is original. The difference between Saturn has wisdom and Uranus is genius, has genius ideas, right? Saturn's about limitations and boundaries and borders. Uranus is about going out of bounds. And the Saturn is related, of course, to melancholy, and Uranus is more nervous and high strung. So Saturn's aspects make philosophers, wise people, hermits, monks, the elderly, the ancestors, lawmakers, judges and critics, bosses and mentors, architects and builders. And in the Uranian view of the Aquarian personality, you're looking at inventors, technicians, anarchists, astrologers, revolutionaries, eccentrics, mad scientists, the heroes of freedom, futurists, and creators. So the function of Saturn in Aquarius is development of autonomous personality. That's one of the functions of Saturn in a natal chart. And with Uranus, it's realization of freedom and individual and human rights. So those are some of the things that are happening with Saturn. I know we've talked a lot more about Saturn than we have about Jupiter. Jupiter isn't as, you know, I think that because of the Greek influence, because Jupiter was like so popular, right? Zeus. So I think that the early Jewish astrological thought around the planet Jupiter had to do with its aspect as aesthetic, righteousness, that largeness, enlarging everything, making it bigger, supersizing everything. That's what Jupiter does. But there's not a gigantic emphasis on Jupiter the way that there is in Saturn in terms of Jewish astrological thought. Questions, comments?
I thought that Jupiter also had to do with the story of Yosef.
Who's speaking? I don't
Just
see.
Hilda.
Okay.
That I thought that it was Jupiter that also had to do with justice and the story of Yosef.
Right. Well, we read the story of Yosef during Chodesh Kislev, and Chodesh Kislev is the month that's related to
I know.
Jupiter.
Yeah. But the meaning and the stories, and you didn't mention it, so I just wondered.
Do you want to say something about that?
In a world right now, as you mentioned, where we really don't know where the beginning of Aquarius, has it come? Is it coming? Pisces is still here. The reality, as Amira, the astrologer, was saying, in terms of it could be hundreds of years. We don't know. So one thing we do know is that loving kindness, compassion, taking care of each other, knowing that when we have differences, as I looked up at the sky and looked at Aquarius, at Saturn and Jupiter, I was thinking how amazing it is that if you look at the sky, in the western sky, it looks like one is on top of the other, like almost like a double star. I thought of what it takes to be able to know you have many differences. You're millions of miles apart, actually, but you look so close together. How do we take a droplet from Torah or Kabbalah and bring that down into justice, into things that need to be transformed, into a world where we've forgotten that we are created equal, but we're not the same. And I think that when I think of Joseph and his brothers and the story of that time in life, the amount of discernment, the amount of forgiveness, the amount of going from the darkest to the light. And I think that it's a very important reminder at this time on our planet. I had mentioned before a book I wrote. It's my first one, and it kind of addresses everything that we're talking about. It's just been gone to the publishers. It's not, there are free poems and a free meditation. And I would love everyone to take a look at it, only because astrologically, humanistically, cosmically, we all need to find ways to be able to be with each other in a way that is very, very needed on the planet. And I have to tell you, I'm honored by Rabbi Korber, who told me about this today. And you don't know who I am.
No,
So
I
I
don't.
thank all of you, but my background has been as a teacher for decades. I have been a mystic. I have been a yoga meditation master. I've taught Yiddish, Hebrew, French, and English. I have been a writer, a singer in 10 languages. And this particular culmination as a daughter of survivors has been also, I could cry reading to you. I don't have to read it, but the testimonials from rabbis and psychologists, please take a look.
What's
at
the name of your book, Hilda?
Chassia's Enchantment.
Would you like to write it in the chat so we can have that on record? So that we'll know how.
If it would take one person to a little bit more calmness, a little bit more integration, being a Scorpio, right on the cusp of Sagittarius, I understand through study and love and Torah how much further I have to go. But as a teacher and as a healer, I offer it as something that could be freely be looked at with a little inspiration. And I will do my best to, where am I going to put this? Okay.
In the chat.
Thank you. But this has been so enlightening. And I thank you all for what you do. And Zalman, I'm a Winnipeg girl. I knew by Zalman since I was little and introduced him in Calgary at the Beth Tzedek when he came to do some.
So then you're even more of a Rishona than we are, because he was in Canada before he came here to California.
I know.
Can you write the title in the chat, please?
Now, where do I go? My daughter's going to show me exactly.
She'll show you. Get the young
It will
people
be
out.
launched
They
on
know how to
Tu
do it.
B'Shvat. It will be launched on Tu B'Shvat, and in the book there is a poem about Tu B'Shvat and Kabbalah and Torah and yoga meditation and the archetypes. I hope you will have a chance to take a peek.
Thank you. Thank
My
you
daughter
for being
just
here,
looked-
and thank you for sharing with us what you're doing. And so we'll
Oh,
look
and
for
thank
that
you all.
information in the chat.
I am a novice compared to where you all are, but I am grateful for getting to be introduced to all of you, and I look forward to other gatherings.
Great. Tamima, are you here? Are you here? Rabbi Tamima, are you?
I'm here.
April, would you do me a very big favor, because I need to run away from the screen for a couple of minutes for human needs. I'm going to ask you to take over the discussion at this point. Maybe you and Jonathan can do that together.
Sure. Happy to play. Well, one of the things I just put in the chat, actually, that I think is interesting, and just to pause on the fact that this is the day of the winter solstice, right? So this is the day, until now, the days have been getting shorter for the past 6 months. And on this day, 2 days a year, uniquely, it's gotten to be the maximum. This will be the shortest day of the year. And it's like the pendulum's going to shift directions. And one of the things that's so awesome, that when a pendulum switches directions, there's a moment of pause, an instant of quiet. And this quiet is coincident with the connection with the conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter. And so it feels to me like there's this opening. This would indicate that's, that we have a lot of dates, a lot of times when the conjunction has happened that we looked at on Lorelai's screens. But there's like a certain potency to that. Any thoughts on that? I mean, can just share a little bit more too. One of the pieces that I've been studying is a commentary on Sefer Yetzirah that I mentioned before. And he goes into such length, especially around Saturn and a little bit around Mars, the Yosef ben Shalom Ashkenazi commentary, and talks about the Saturnian who is connected to wisdom, but it's really aligned with the Chorban, with the destruction. So it's like a destructive type of an energy. But what he does say is that when the Saturnian, really putting it into personality types, it's like looks up to the heavens and doesn't really care about what's going on Earth, and is just kind of connected to their own process, that there's certain, like a certain wisdom that gets downloaded, but what happens is that things on Earth tend to fall apart. But when the Saturnian changes the focus, her focus of attention, and looks on Earth, everything gets lined up and opens up and matches together and unfolds into abundance and health and ease. And so I feel really optimistic about Saturn. They're double letters, and so that run in Kesefri Yetzirah. So that suggests two modalities, like looking up to the heavens for the Saturnian, or looking down and on Earth and caring for the land. So with keeping that in mind, I feel it makes me feel optimistic that the conjunction's happening with Jupiter, Tzedek, who's in charge of, it's like of getting things right, of correctness, of consistency, of things that are positive. And so this connection of this complete wisdom connected with Jupiter, that is righteousness, on a day of unique opening, which is the solstice, really fills me with great hope. And we all know that we need hope, and the Earth needs help right now. And also the fact that we're in the constellation of Aquarius, where this is actually happening. Two things. Well, besides being the constellation equated with the Jewish people, and maybe I'm a little biased because I'm Jewish, it's also the constellation, you could think of it just more simply with water, and the life-giving element that water is, right? So water, life as we know it cannot exist without water. And like when you look into a desert, there's a vision of, really just looking at the dry desert earth and seeing like a little teeny weeny flower pop out. And I'm seeing a pink flower when I see this image, and the extent that this flower has to go through, and the commitment it has for the privilege of life to really obtain water, right? Water is being the qualifying ingredient, for life. When scientists look for life on other planets, they look for the possibility of having water, of finding water. And from that place, then there's a possibility that life as we know it may exist. And not only that, the mikveh, the water as the transformer. So I see a lot of positivity in this, in what's going on right here and now. And really, I'm praying that it comes out in a positive way. I know we all are. Yeah, may it be the will that this coming together opens up channels that provides water and nourishment, the aspects of life that are needed for the world, for community, and for each of us individually. May it be the will.
Amen, amen, amen.
Thank you, Tamima.
Thank you so much for saying that. I was listening to you from the kitchen where I was getting the iced coffee that I desperately need right now. So I was going, yes, yes. Thank you for being positive, because I didn't mean to go into negativity land. I just wanted to, I needed to balance, because I have Libra rising and I have my natal Jupiter conjunct Libra, my Libra rising, Jupiter and Libra. It's a big problem, big. I have to balance the whole cliche of the age of Aquarius, the pop cliche. I have to balance that with the possible dark side of it, because I have to. So thank you for rebalancing us and bringing us back to hope, because that's where we need to be. We need to be hopeful.
God willing. Yes.
Amy Wachtel says,
That's a
in the
debt.
future, I would request that each speaker has to identify their sun signs and possibly their rising sun and moon. Yes, I'm a Sagittarius moon and Leo and Libra rising. That's my story.
So I was born, actually in the Jewish calendar, I was born on the first day of Capricorn, and on the solar calendar, I was born on the last day of Sagittarius. So I'm actually really cuspy in that way.
You are the Jupiter-Saturn Conjunction.
Pardon? Say again?
You are.
You just did my Stein. Oh.
Oh no, what's happening here?
Yes.
Okay. So
that would be December 20th. Someone put it in chat.
That's right. Happy birthday. Yes. Baruch Hashem. Well, listen, you guys, I think we've said a lot today. We've been here since 9:30. I want to thank everybody who showed up and spent the whole day with us, learning, sharing, participating. I hope that you all got a lot out of it. I know that I did. And I want to thank all of our amazing, amazing contributors who are much, much more than contributors. They're amazing souls, neshamas that have come into this world to bring down light. Thank you, Yosef Needleman Ruiz. If you have something going on that you want to let everybody know about, send it to me, and I'm going to send out an email to everybody with the link to the recording, which I have to download and then I have to upload. So don't expect it in like 10 minutes. It's going to be several hours, if not tomorrow by the time it all gets done. But everybody's going to get this as a recording. And I will also send out all of the links and information to everybody's happenings, like their websites and their books and Victoria Hanna's information. So you'll have all of the resources that you heard about today during this conference. And I just want to say personally that it's been my humble privilege to be able to do this. It's like, this is my I had a dream speech. I had a dream that we would all get together one day and talk about these things, and it finally happened. So I want to thank you for being part of it and making my dream come true. And I wish you all beautiful dreams that should only be for the revealed good in all of your lives.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Yes, okay.